My colleague from Wisconsin, and thank you for all of your efforts and what you have been doing. It's an honor for me to serve with you, and at the heart and soul of what your interests are all about is what that chart reflects. It's about people who are making the minimum wage. What is their life about? What are we doing in terms of the policies that we create in this institution, which is an institution which was demonstrated to what's historically been about is providing opportunity. And a drop in the minimum wage is not an opportunity for future success. And your characterization of the Trans-Pacific Partnership in creating this kind of an effort is absolutely on target. And in terms of this agreement, next week, as you know, the trade ministers from 12 nations are going to meet in Singapore as U.S. trade negotiators continue to push for this partnership, the TPP trade agreement. They want to push it, to move it, so that we can do something by the end of this year. You made a point before. This could have been a new opportunity. It represented an effort to create something that was new, a sustainable model that promoted economic development with shared prosperity. But as you know, unfortunately, the talks have gone down the same road as previous trade agreements. Export of more jobs, not more goods, unsafe imports, and threats to public health, among other things. You made that clear. Country lost more than 5 million manufacturing jobs, millions of service sector jobs since the North America Free Trade Agreement, which I will tell my colleague that I was proud to vote against when that came before this body. And the World Trade Organization, both of those went into effect. We've seen the loss of more than 5 million jobs. Meanwhile, again, your point well stated, wages in the United States have decreased, and economic inequality, something that's talked about a lot today. It's not an abstract concept. It's not an abstract construct. It is the result of public policy that has fostered economic inequality in the United States. And that has increased as a result of these past trade agreements. The recent trade agreement with Korea reinforced why we cannot continue to do more of the same. In its first year, U.S. exports to Korea dropped 10% as imports from Korea increased. The trade deficit with Korea exploded by 37% in just 1 year, which equates to a net loss of approximately 40,000 more U.S. jobs. Why, in an economy that is so difficult for people today, are we embarking on public policy initiatives that increase lost jobs, lost wages, more economic uncertainty and insecurity for families in the United States? It's wrong-headed. There is no reason to believe that the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal will not be the same kind of a raw deal for U.S. workers, and more as this agreement would be unprecedented in scope. The President himself has commented that the pact would establish rules that extend far beyond traditional trade matters to include, and I quote, a whole range of new trade issues that are going to be coming up in the future: innovation, regulatory convergence, how we are thinking about the Internet, and intellectual property. The agreement will create binding policies on future Congresses in numerous areas, to include those that are related to labor, patent and copyright, land use, food, agriculture and product standards, natural resources, the environment, state-owned enterprises, and government procurement policies, as well as financial, healthcare, energy, telecommunications, and other service sector regulations. This is a treaty that goes beyond tariffs. The scope is, as I've outlined, it is unbelievable. And we also know that the lack of transparency on this treaty is unbelievable. It's interesting to note that industry has had great access to the process and what's going on. Members of Congress, both sides of the aisle, have not had that same access to the information in this trade agreement. And it is our constitutional authority as members of Congress to approve trade agreements. We cannot be frozen out any longer. We're not going to tolerate that. We know, for example, the agreement will likely lead to increases in U.S. imports of shrimp and other seafood from Vietnam and Malaysia. In 2012, this is my colleague, I believe my colleague knows this. Others need to know this. In 2012, imported seafood products from Vietnam were refused entry 206 times because of contamination concerns, while some exporters in Malaysia have acted as a conduit to transship Chinese shrimp to the United States in order to circumvent both FDA import alerts and anti-dumping duties. When I said they have been stopped, why have they been stopped? Filthy product, contaminated product, antibiotic-laced product, putting in jeopardy the public health of people in the United States. And yet, rather than improving food safety enforcement and regulations in partner nations, the agreement may lead to a drain of resources needed to ensure that food safety, as agencies like the FDA are called in to resolve these disputes with other countries. The agreement may even undermine critical U.S. food safety regulations. We also know from the recently leaked text that U.S. trade negotiators, and I say recently leaked because we don't have, I repeat, we don't have access to the information. We're not able to go and or come in and have people lay it out for us. The leaked text that U.S. trade negotiators are proposing an unbalanced intellectual property provision that are going to hinder our trading partners' access to safe and more affordable drugs. This is not only going to raise the price of medicines overseas and preventing millions from getting the medical care that they need, but it limits the ability of the United States companies exporting these drugs to grow internationally and to generate more jobs at home. Incredibly, even as the administration is proposing to lower drug costs for consumers here in the United States by proposing in its budget to modify the length of exclusivity on brand name biologics from 12 to 7 years, our trade negotiators are demanding 12 years of data exclusivity from our trading partners, denying their people quicker access to more affordable drugs. How can the United States be in the business? It's morally unacceptable that life-saving drugs that people overseas will have less access to. That's not who we are as a nation. It's not where our values lie. These and other critical areas are being negotiated without sufficient congressional consultation, even though, as I mentioned, under the Constitution, the Congress, not the executive, has the exclusive constitutional authority to, quote, regulate commerce with foreign nations, end quote, and write the nation's laws. Over the last few decades, presidents have increasingly taken over both of those powers through a mechanism known as fast track. Simply what it does is it erodes Congress's ability to shape the content of the free trade agreement, which today, as I said again earlier, clearly go well beyond tariff issues. Not only does it of the shaping of the trade agreement, but it then becomes, if you provide for fast track authority, then that means it comes to this body, and my colleague from Wisconsin knows this, he served in legislative bodies, that we have no ability to amend. And you just come and you rubber stamp it. No more. No more. Under the recent iteration of Fast Track, which expired, by the way, in 2007, U.S. trade negotiations required various stages of congressional consultations before and during the negotiations. But even that minimal level of congressional consultation has not occurred with regard to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Treaty, which is why so many of myself and other colleagues, including my colleague from Wisconsin, Mr. Pocan, both sides of the aisle have made clear that the 20th century fast track and its lack of any meaningful input from Congress in the formative stages of an agreement is not appropriate for the 21st century trade agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. More fast track is a non-starter. What we need to do is to create a 21st century mechanism to negotiate, approve trade agreements that ensure that they benefit more Americans. Don't decrease their wages. Don't decrease the minimum wage. Give them a fighting chance to help themselves and their families. We cannot approve a Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement that continues to follow the same failed trade template that has hurt working families for so long, that jeopardized our public health here and abroad, and that creates binding policies on future Congresses that we had no input in creating. For if we are to uphold the trust of our constituents, for them, for this economy, for our country, we need to do better. And the content and the process of the Trans-Pacific Partnership does not allow us to do better by our constituents or the great people of the United States. This is a treaty that needs to be restarted. Instead of being brought up and finished by the end of the year, we need to restart the effort, have congressional input, and do something that will help to make a difference in the lives of the people that we serve. I thank the gentleman for having this special order to focus on this issue, and I know that he will, as I will, continue to try to make clear to the public what we are talking about, what is in this legislation, which is not going to benefit themselves and their families. That's something that I know that you are committed to, and I am committed to as well, and we are going to continue this battle. And as far as I'm concerned, I won't speak for you, we're not going to make that end of the year a treaty. There's going to be many, many roadblocks before that occurs. So I thank the gentleman for allowing me to participate in this special order tonight.